Hello, my name is Jenke, and I am the president of the Seguin Area Chamber of Commerce, located here in Seguin, Texas, which is located between Austin and San Antonio along the Interstate 10 and 35 corridors. Uh, when I started with my regional action plan, I think one of the best parts of it was that we had a plan that was already kind of in place and rolling. However, the plan had not been put together, and we didn't know exactly who our partners were going to be and how we were going to staff the partnership itself. So, as the project progressed, we became much more of a, I guess you could say, cohesive team with a few of the manufacturers and with a few of the local agencies, being our Economic Development Corporation and the Chamber coming together. And then we recruited a community college because they were really and truly kind of the experts, if you will, that we needed to have on board. So anyhow, go through, and I think it's important for us to lay out the dynamics of what we look like as Seguin. But Seguin, we have the most manufacturing jobs per capita inside of the U.S. We are a population of about 31,000 in 2021. Our population in 2024 jumped up to about 38,000. So we've grown pretty substantially in a 3-year period. Our estimated population in 2030 is about 50,000. So we'll be nearly double in size by 2033, 2034. Our manufacturing sector here is one of those that we love to say we've got a little bit of all, very balanced portfolio. We've got machinery manufacturing, we've got fabricated metal manufacturing, composites and materials manufacturing. For some companies that you may have heard of that makes big earth moving equipment, and the other ones are small trucks that are produced in San Antonio. We produce all the composite beds for those. Our primary employers, 4 of our top 10 Seguin employers are manufacturing operations. If you look at the total number of manufacturing employees that we have, it's about 2,600. Our production is closer to 2,000. Those guys are actually hands-on doing the work itself. Our GDP per capita is about 52,000 a year. So that's kind of important, and I'll get to that a little bit later. Here's where we kind of stand out, if you will, for our manufacturers, or why the manufacturers like our space so much. Our median family income is about 58,165, which is fairly good for the Texas corridor that we're on. We've got about 10,700 households locally. But in 2024, I think this is kind of important. 2024, we had about 15,000 new housing permits that have entered in our system over the last 2 years. So 23, 24. That's substantial because the infrastructure that we have in place was already put there because we knew one day we were going to grow. But anyhow, so that 15,000 allows us to bring in much larger workforce, or access to a much larger workforce, because most of those houses are in that workforce housing dollars and cents area. Our total employment locally is about 14,000. Educational statistics, and I think this is kind of important because the manufacturers, most all of our manufacturers, or we're going to say the 8 partners that we have locally, all require a high school diploma or equivalent. So that's important. You know, about half of the local population has a high school diploma. Half of them are still in school, or a quarter of them are still in school, and a quarter of them don't have a high school degree at all. When you get into the associate degree, we've got about 6.3. In a bachelor's degree, about 12%, and your master's is only about 5%. For the regional action plan, I think it's important for me to look at the background. Seguin had an opportunity to increase the total amount of production that we had inside the manufacturing facilities, but we didn't have a pipeline of new employees within the manufacturing sector to go into those entry-level jobs. For instance, in January 2024, there were over 100 entry-level manufacturing jobs that were not filled. And these jobs were at the baseline for living wages. So it's not like they paid horribly or otherwise. We haven't had much progress with closing that gap. And it's estimated by July of next year, 2025, there will be another 166 newly created jobs within the sector that we're going to have to fill. So that's challenging. If you look at what our possible solution was, is uh, we gathered a group of us last summer. Again, this was summer of 2023. Manufacturers Community College Chamber and our local government, which is our SEDC, our Economic Development Corporation, as well as our Convention and Visitors Bureau and our local politicians, our mayor, city manager, and a couple of the council folks. We're all on that steering committee. And what we did was we just established what the needs were for the skills that would lead to manufacturing entry-level jobs. We also included, as after we had identified that, the high school, their career and technical education director, and their program chair. One of the things that we had to work through that I think is important to note here is when you've got 6 manufacturers, there are 8 manufacturers in a room, there's always a little bit of competition because everybody wants that one personnel to help tick up their number of production folks that they've got. We worked through that competition with the manufacturers, and they, at the end, were just looking, okay, if they're not working for me, they need to be working for you. So that friendly competition is still around. However, behind that is they're made leaps and bounds of progress to get to the point where they were getting along. Those manufacturers also took the time of their training managers, training and human development managers, put together a steering committee. And that steering committee worked with the community college to develop and identify courses that were needed for those entry-level jobs. We created some rules for ourselves, and I hate to say rules, but rules is really what we did, to be open and effectively establish criteria for all the manufacturers. So there was no one manufacturer that says, oh, I have to have this for entry level, or another manufacturer said, you know, I don't like that, but here I'd like to have this. We established some rules to where we were all on the same page. We met weekly for progress updates, and that didn't matter if we were on vacation or otherwise. These folks who are decision makers, they are the plant CEOs locally. We're calling in to a Zoom call weekly, and we held each other accountable for the progress that we made or we didn't make. Kind of the results. Here's where we kind of got into the meat and the bones of this, and I think this was kind of the pivotal point where we actually got to see something that was taking place. That steering committee with the community college, the CTE, and our training directors all got together, and they established that it would need to be a 1-year program that grows a pipeline of employees for manufacturing jobs. We contacted local, state, and our representative and the higher education coordinating board because we didn't have a community college that would provide all the training that we needed. So we worked through the legislative process, and we did get that approved in February of 2024, which gave us the green light. The irony behind this is that in Texas, the governor seldom signs a bill right after it's approved through both houses and gets the handshake across the floor. He literally signed our bill within about a 3-day time period after it made it through that. So we were well on our way to getting some things started and getting it done. One of the things that was a challenge for us was we had an equipment need. We knew that there was going to be some training equipment that was involved with it. We reached out to some of those employers that we have who also have foundations, and they provided us with about $1.2 million for just the training, I guess you could say the training backdrops, whether it be a machining tool or whether it's a production tool or whether it's torque wrenches or whether it's hydraulic test cells, whatever that was, they provided that for us. And one of the challenges that we also had was we needed to make sure that the faculty were credentialed. They need to have the credentials to where they were teaching these courses, and if these students that we'll talk about later got into the course, wanted to transfer that into a associate degree or a master's degree later, a bachelor's degree later on, they could do that. And then the recruiting efforts were kind of backburnered until we figured all of that out, and I'll get to those recruiting efforts and how that ended up inside of the chamber later on. We worked through the policy of manufacturers to establish some work days and course days off for those potential employees. It was a tough ask for me to say, well, what if we gave those students a couple days off during the week and the other 3 days they work for you, and you provided them with a 4th day in there? and they took home that pay for 4 days instead of a 5-day work week. After about 3 weeks of talking through it, the manufacturers all kind of held themselves accountable to make sure that they were looking at that and finding the best way to do that. The end result was that the manufacturers pay their folks that are going through these courses for a 5-day work week. They go to class 2 days out of that week, and they work at the plant for the other 3 days out of the week. The program that we use is kind of the catalyst for this is the Texas Federation of Advanced Manufacturing, Texas FAME, which we created the Lone Star chapter. And that was created because then we had a guide to help guide the students through the college coursework that was there. The Texas FAME Steering Committee established that coursework, sequencing that made sense. You know, it was the courses needed to be in a sequential order where they had the learning needs going into a course before they got to the outcome of that of the next course. The Texas FAME and the partners established and sought funding for training equipment. Again, we had to go out because after we created that initial cadre of training equipment that we needed, we found that we needed more of that equipment. And then we began to work. And I'm going to say that the work was tough. We went through about half of the work that we really and truly needed to do, and we're exhausted. When we got to the recruiting, we finally got to that a little bit farther down the road after we had secured some funds and we knew that we were going to be able to put some equipment into the classrooms to train those students. The partners thought it was best that the initial group would be graduating high school students from our local high schools. So let's give them an opportunity to get a jump start on life. So our first cohort was established from the local high school, and they were all 2024 graduates. We had established the Chamber of the Texas FAME would accomplish all of the recruiting. We delivered the information presentation to about 50 students. It resulted in 39 return applications from the program, and then later on, I'll get to that. It was really and truly, it was about 44 applications for the program. And then we delivered a second information session where there were 33 students, and that had resulted in another 24 applications. So of those 63 return applications that we got from both of those sessions, there were 44 who agreed to the next level of screening. And I'll just kind of caveat that with the next level of screening was a background check, a drug test, a basic drug test, and a basic physical. They wanted to make sure that they would be able to work inside of the manufacturing room. The cohorts, here's kind of where we got down to the selecting those folks. And cohort number 1 is well underway. They started in June. They have already been through their 6 weeks, which are 2 courses. They've got their certificates that they're probably holding there. I know there's only 11 in the picture, but there are 12 students that started, and there's still 12 students in it. But of that cohort number 1, we had 32 applicants that remained that weren't selected of those 44. So we placed those into the selection pool for cohort number 2. Cohort number 2, we had about 44 applications, and those were 32 that were existing, and then the others were new applicants for that. And they were all 2023 or 2024 high school graduates. Well, again, we selected 12 out of that. Their cohort start date is August 2024. All of those remaining applicants were placed into the pool for cohort number 3. Cohort number 3 is set for selection in November of 2024. Student employee, and we changed this from the student to the student employee because they are a student, but yes, they are an employee for these manufacturers as well. But again, to reiterate, they had to have a high school diploma or equivalent. They must pass and agreed upon by the partner screening, which was a basic physical and a drug screening. They had to be able to be hired by the partners. They were hired by the manufacturing partners as an employee. So again, that was kind of a plus for us because they were getting some OJT out of it as well, some experience. And then those students must agree to work the prescribed days by the manufacturing partner. So if the manufacturing partner wants them to work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and they go to school Tuesday, Thursday, they did that. If the manufacturing partner wants them to work Tuesday or go to school on Monday, Wednesday, and they work Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, then that's the way that was. Anyhow, and there were 6 manufacturing partners that hired the initial two cohorts, six specific in each one of them. Cohort number one, all were graduates in 2024. They were hired by 4 different manufacturers within a partnership. They do their college coursework on Tuesday, Thursday, work in the manufacturing process on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And they're paid for a 40-hour work week to go to class at $17 an hour. Here's the one up, if you will, for those guys. Most of the manufacturers offered them overtime on Saturday if they wanted to work that. And I'll tell you that about 50% of those students, so about 6 of them, are taking the opportunity to work those overtime hours on a Saturday. Cohort number 2, coursework begins in 2024. Every one of those guys have all been hired by 4 different manufacturers. So we've got a total of 8 manufacturers that are working with us in the program. And 6 of those manufacturers have students from both cohorts, or that are across both of those cohorts. The second one, they attend class on Monday and Wednesday. They work in the manufacturing industry on Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. And again, they're paid for a 40-hour work week. Some of those students are actually working closer to 52 hours. So they're doing a 12-hour shift on a Saturday. And most of the manufacturers have said no Sunday work for them if they have class on Monday, or no Sunday work, because they believe that should be your day to spend with family for the students themselves. Cohort number 3, the selection begins in November 2024. I think this one's going to be an interesting, because it'll be the first one that'll be a blended mix from workers from outside of the recent high school graduates. So it'll be workers that may be working at McDonald's, and maybe workers that are working in retail, and maybe workers that are working inside of stocking shelves inside of a Walmart or something. So I think it'll be interesting. There is a kind of a basic test that the college gives to them to see if they're cut out for it. And if they're selected, they will take that test, and that test will tell us a lot about how well they will perform during the coursework itself. What about incumbent workers? And here was kind of the surprise for us. We have a middle skill working gap as well. Currently, there's about 29 within the area inside of manufacturing that are all $60,000 to $75,000 a year jobs. But those that are in that upper semi-skilled typically don't qualify for it, because they either don't have the OJT training for it, or they don't have the coursework that's needed for it. So the manufacturers decided, okay, well, on Friday, since we'll have extra guys in production, i.e. the students, why don't we send one of our incumbent workers to go to training? So they created some training courses to bring them up, those incumbent workers up and on speed faster than your external hires, because they're already used to what the company or the culture inside of the manufacturing world is. So that course is built around maximum of 16 students. That's pretty much taps out the faculty we have for it. We had 25 applications for the course, and the coursework consists of advanced Excel, because most of their tracking is done on Excel worksheets, and leadership and management training, and technical writing. And that course will be held on Fridays, and that begins in August of 2024. So what's next? And here's kind of the icing on all of it. The community college is working to expand the capacity to serve, if you will, so we can do some open enrollment. So Joe off the street wants a job inside of manufacturing, but wants to be set to where he can get into there at the top dollar from the start. They're working on creating those type of courses. All of those partners that we have, the 8 total manufacturers inside of the collaborative co-op, if you will, have agreed to interview all of those open enrollment students upon course completion. The interesting part about it is right now we've got a conversation that all the manufacturers are talking about doing a sign-on bonus for them. So if they put their time and their effort into the coursework and they pay for the courses themselves, the manufacturers are going to give them a sign-on bonus. And the last part of it is we're documenting some of the transferability so we can see if this works at other locations. One of our steel manufacturers, or our steel manufacturer that we have here, has locations in three other uh, parts of the U.S. So we're documenting all that we're doing here. So we're going to try this as a transferability with a couple of those other locations. The one location that they're in Oklahoma has a fairly large uh, saturation, if you will, of manufacturers in that space. So they're similar to what our demographics are here. And we're hoping that we can document the transferability or portability and move it up to Oklahoma and see if the program still works the same up there. Anyhow, and then the last part of it is we're going to continue to build the training delivery capacity and seek funding for the equipment. So with that, I hope you kind of got the gist of what we started with my regional action plan of, yeah, we're going to try to create this program we created a program. The chamber was a chamber and Texas Fame folks were the catalyst for the recruiting part of it, working with our high school CTE folks, the community college and the manufacturers. It's been pretty successful for us. So with that, thank you for your time.